The shortcut that no one uses twice. The Missing Girl of Ridgeway Cemetery. Subscribe now, if you are brave enough to walk the same path she did. It started on an ordinary October night. Cold, windy, the kind of night when the moon hides behind clouds just long enough to make you second-guess every shadow. Ridgeway College sophomore Amber Collins left her friend's apartment just before midnight. The cameras caught her on Main Street, wearing a red hoodie and headphones, smiling, texting her roommate. Be home in 10, taking the shortcut. That shortcut cut straight through Ridgeway Cemetery, an old burial ground at the edge of town, a shortcut no one used twice. The next morning, Amber's roommate reported her missing. Police combed through every inch of that path, but the only thing they found was one of her shoes near an open grave untouched, no footprints leading away, no drag marks, no signs of a struggle. Just a single shoe resting on the edge like it had been placed there carefully. Locals weren't surprised. They'd warned students for decades. The Ridgeway shortcut, they said, was cursed. Every 10 years, like clockwork, someone vanished there, always at night, always alone, always wearing something red. Amber's case was the same down to the hour. It had been exactly 10 years since the last disappearance a man named Eli Harper, a construction worker walking home from a late shift. His wife said his flashlight was still on when police found it, lying in the middle of the path, beam pointing straight at an unmarked grave. Detectives tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but the case file from 1983 told the same story. A high school girl missing after cutting through the cemetery on her bike. Red jacket. Last seen 11:52 p.m. Same date, same storm. The cemetery groundskeeper back then, Harold Benton, was still alive. Now, 93, he lived in a nursing home on the edge of town. When police questioned him, he said something that unsettled even the hardened detectives. "They walk it in order," he muttered. "Every 10 years, like it's their turn." He claimed he'd seen them one night, the missing ones. All of them, standing in a row among the tombstones, facing the shortcut trail, waiting for someone to pass. Their eyes, he said, didn't shine like eyes anymore, they just reflected light. Investigators dismissed him as senile, but his details matched the older reports too perfectly. So when students began leaving flowers at the gate for Amber, many noticed something strange. Her photo, printed on flyers, began to fade faster than the rest. Not torn, not rained on, just fading, as if she'd never been there. A week after her disappearance, police released security footage from the cemetery's entrance camera. It showed Amber entering the gate, hood up, phone light swinging as she walked. 2 minutes later, a second figure appeared, taller, darker, walking the same path but never catching up. Then both lights disappeared, no exit footage. The camera glitched for 13 seconds. When it came back, the gate was empty, fog swirling in slow motion like breath in the cold. Amber's mother couldn't sleep after watching it. She said she played the clip over and over until she noticed something no one else had. In the split second before the video cut out, one of the headstones behind Amber moved slowly, like a door shifting open. Police called it compression artifacts, digital noise. But Amber's mother said something different in her interview. She leaned into the microphone, her voice shaking but certain. That wasn't noise. It was her reflection. And she was smiling. The town tried to move on. The college issued curfews. Ridgeway Cemetery was closed off for restoration. But 10 days later, Amber's red hoodie appeared folded neatly on cemetery gate, dry, clean, and warm to the touch, even though it had rained all night. That same morning, the groundskeeper's nurse found him dead in his sleep, his hands clasped around a dirt-covered Polaroid. When investigators developed it, the photo showed the Ridgeway shortcut covered in fog, and Amber walking down the path. But standing behind her, barely visible through the mist, was Harold Benton, the groundskeeper. He'd been in bed that night. The photo changed everything. Detectives didn't know what to make of it. The timestamp on the Polaroid was clear. October 21st, 2024, 11:56 p.m. That was the night Amber disappeared, and yet the photo had been taken with a camera model that hadn't been made in 50 years. The lead investigator, Detective Sarah Mendez, visited the cemetery herself the next evening, determined to prove it was all superstition. She arrived just before midnight, armed with a flashlight, a camera, and a skeptical heart hardened by 20 years on the job. The Ridgeway Cemetery was quiet, too quiet. The sound of insects and wind that usually filled the night was gone. Even her footsteps seemed muffled by the thick fog that rolled over the ground. She followed the narrow dirt trail, the same shortcut Amber had taken her light, catching the edges of old gravestones, some toppled, others half buried. The smell of wet leaves mixed with something metallic in the air, like rust or blood. At the halfway point, Sarah stopped. Something felt wrong. She turned off her flashlight and listened. Nothing. Then, faintly, she heard footsteps, slow, steady, coming from behind her. "Hello?" she called out. "This area's restricted." No answer. The footsteps stopped. She raised her light and saw something strange in the fog ahead, not a person, but shapes. Human outlines standing motionless among the tombstones. 6 or 7 of them, their faces hidden in the mist. When she stepped closer, her beam flickered over the nearest figure, a young man, frozen mid-step, eyes wide open but blank, expressionless. His clothes were faded, soaked in dew. His hand cluttered, touched something, a red scarf, frayed and damp. Sarah's heart pounded. She recognized the face from old photos Eli Harper, the man who disappeared in 2014. She stumbled backward, her light sweeping across the others, a girl on a bicycle, a man in a construction jacket, a woman in a red coat, all of them motionless, all of them standing in perfect alignment beside the trail. The air grew colder. Her breath came out in white clouds. Then, slowly, their heads began to turn toward her. She dropped her flashlight. The beam spun across the ground, hitting the trail, and in that moment, she saw fresh footprints leading away from where she stood. Only they weren't hers. She grabbed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Detective Mendez. I need static." Then, faintly, a whisper came through. "Turn around." She froze. The voice wasn't from her radio. It was behind her. Sarah turned, and there stood a woman in a red hoodie. Amber Collins. Her eyes were glassy, her skin pale as marble, her lips parted slightly as if trying to speak. But her voice came out like wind. "You shouldn't have come here." The fog thickened around them, swallowing the graves, the sky, everything. Sarah backed away, shaking, until her heel hit something hard. She looked down an open grave. Inside lay another body. Hers. The world seemed to tilt. The fog rose higher, and the figures began to move, walking one by one down the path in the same direction, same slow rhythm, like a procession. Their eyes glowed faintly white in the mist. Sarah screamed for help, but the sound came out muffled, like she was underwater. The red, hooded girl reached out and placed a hand on her chest. "You can't stop it," Amber whispered. "It's your turn." The detective's flashlight flickered out. By morning, her cruiser was found parked outside the gate, engine running, radio still on. Her badge lay on the front seat, covered in dirt, and her notebook sat open on the dashboard. The last words written inside were smeared but legible. "They walk in order. And the next name is mine." That night, the fog didn't lift from Ridgeway. The town slept, unaware that the path had claimed another. But the old cemetery camera, the one no one used anymore, recorded something. At exactly 11:54 p.m., a faint red light appeared in the mist. Not a flashlight, not a car, but a woman's figure walking down the trail, surrounded by 6 others following behind. They moved in perfect rhythm, and as the feed glitched, the number of figures became 7. By the following week, Ridgeway was a town that refused to speak. The police sealed off the cemetery, claiming it was an unstable site, but everyone knew that was a lie. They'd lost one of their own, and no one wanted to admit that the ground had taken her. Detective Sarah Mendez's disappearance made national headlines for a day, and then quietly vanished from news cycles just like all the others before her. The college students left town early for the semester break. Locals avoided Main Street after sunset. The fog, however, stayed. The only person who still visited was a man named Luke Harper, Eli Harper's younger brother. He'd been a teenager when Eli vanished 10 years ago. Now, 30, Luke worked nights at a nearby factory. But every morning before dawn, he parked by the cemetery gate and waited. He wasn't sure what for, maybe closure, maybe punishment. But one day, the fog shifted, and something caught his eye. A new headstone. It hadn't been there before. The earth around it was freshly packed, the inscription chiseled clean and bright. Detective Sarah Mendez, 1978, 24, they walk in order. He stood frozen. The town hadn't even declared her dead yet. Behind the stone, the narrow trail cut through the fog like a scar. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside the gate. The air changed instantly. Cold, wet, soundless. Even the crunch of his boots seemed muted, swallowed by the mist. As he followed the trail, Luke noticed something carved into the tree. As that lined the path, faint initials, etched at uneven heights. He traced one with his fingers. AC, 2024, Amber Collins. A few feet farther, EH, 2014. And again, KJ, 2004. The names stretched back over a century, leading deeper into the cemetery's heart. His breath came faster. "What are you trying to show me?" he whispered. Then he reached the clearing. It was small, maybe 20 feet across, but perfectly circular. In the center, 7 graves formed a ring, each marked by a single weathered stone. The fog pooled thick around them like smoke. The newest one was open. He stepped closer, heart pounding. The headstone had no name yet, just a freshly carved year 2034. Luke stumbled backward. No, that can't be right. The ground beneath him shifted slightly, soft as if something was moving below. He froze. The air hummed faintly low, deep, almost rhythmic, like breathing. Then, out of the mist, figures began to emerge one by one. Amber first, then Eli, then Sarah. Their faces were calm, blank, eyes glowing faintly white in the fog. "We're not gone," Amber said softly. "We're waiting," Sarah added. Luke's voice cracked. "For what?" "For the next one," Eli whispered. "For you." He ran. Branches clawed at his jacket, fog burning his lungs. But no matter which direction he turned, the path looped back to the clearing. The 7 figures stood closer each time, their movements too synchronized, too deliberate. Then he saw it, an old gravestone half sunk into the mud behind them. The inscription was faint, but he could still read it. The Ridgeway family guardians of the gate. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The cemetery wasn't named after the town. The town was named after the family, the ones who'd started the ritual a century ago to protect Ridgeway from something buried deeper below. Every 10 years, a new name, a new life offered to keep whatever was beneath the graves from waking. Luke looked down. The earth around his boots was glowing faintly red. The figures stepped forward together, their voices rising in a whisper that sounded like the wind through